is the reason why I'm using this image right here, and it comes from the movie "Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood," which was a very popular film back in the, I would say, early to mid '90s. It was made by Keenan Ivory Wayans, and it starred Shawn Wayans and Marlon Wayans. It had a pretty much all-star cast. It was basically a film that was making fun of or parodies of hood classic films. And it's the reason why I'm using this image is because I'm basically piggybacking off of a commentary that I just recently did, a Petty Pendergrass video I just did, involving that woman Kathy Zhu, who made those comments and ended up losing her title of Miss Michigan and losing her position and spot to compete for the Miss World pageant or whatever it was. In one of her comments that she made, because she made a couple of them, but in the comment she made in direction to black people was that the reason we're in the position we're in is because of quote unquote black on black crime. And then she said that we need to clean up our own neighborhoods. But when people called her out on it, she tried to switch it up and say that what she meant to say, or what she was really saying, is that all communities need to do this. No, like I said in the video, she meant what she said. But this video right here could apply to any group of people that's considered non-ADOS, but specifically to the Asian community. It's amazing when people like that Kathy Zhu make comments like that, and then about cleaning up our community and everything like that, but they will break their neck or any limb in their body to set up shop wherever they can in the same community that they claim is filthy and needs to be cleaned up. It's funny how our communities are so dirty and so filthy to them, but our money isn't. They'll take that filthy money because it still spins. It still keeps their business in rotation. You see all these nail shops. You see all these hair stores, these beauty supply stores, these carryouts, these cleaners. And those are just a couple of businesses that I know right off rip that I know that they own, because those are the typical ones that you will find in many black communities. But they claim that we need to clean up our community. If anything needs to be cleaned up, it would be running you up out of there so we can set up shop in our own neighborhoods. Quiet as it's kept, I truly believe that black people could set up shop, but the thing that's keeping it from happening is people like those in the Asian community, those maybe in the Arab community, those in the Hispanic community. Notice that all of those groups have a twinge, I should say, of ill will toward the people that they set up shop with or set up shop near to get their money, but they wouldn't have it any other way. Notice that any of them who set up shop in these communities that they claim is so dirty and so filthy, they don't live anywhere near where they are set up shop at. Many of them live maybe 20 minutes or more away, and you got to drive all the way from wherever, probably in the suburbs somewhere, to drive over to the quote unquote hood, the ghetto, the projects, to make their money. Now, something else just dawned on me. Now, why can't they set up shop in those areas? What is so interesting about us that they can't get from over there? I believe it is they know they can't make any money over there, because most likely Palm Colored has shops set up all the way over there, and it keeps them from starting business over there. So they'll come to where we are at, keep us from starting businesses in our own neighborhoods, and then they'll put shops up there. Now, what I found also interesting, especially when it comes to the Asian community, is they have Chinatowns, and most Chinatowns are in every major metropolitan city. Now, for me, the Chinatown for me is downtown DC, right actually near the building where I work at. Is right, literally walking distance. I can walk outside of that particular job, and I'm literally right there in Chinatown. And Chinatown covers maybe a couple blocks. It's not big, but it's very noticeable. Some Chinatowns are bigger than others, but they pretty much all are recognizable. And they own pretty much those couple of blocks. You'll have your carryouts. Hell, some of them even own, I think a CVS is down there as well. So they own that as well. Anything that's within that block radius, they own all of that. But how much do you want to bet that It's downtown DC, which is a melting pot of people of various backgrounds, that they don't make even close to the amount of money that they would make when opposed to them setting up shop in these so-called filthy black neighborhoods that they claim needs to be cleaned up. Because they know the spending power of black people is in the trillions. That's another reason why they don't want ADOS to get those reparations, because they know that if we were to get those reparations, 17.1 trillion is what they're saying, but I think that's on the low end. So, I would say 17.1 trillion plus. If we were to get our hands onto that, it would be bye-bye to their shops. They would have no other choice but to close shop, because what we would do is make sure to implement some business savvy black people up in there to close them out, shut them out, and get our own businesses up and running up in there, one way or another. And that is what would scare them, because that means it cuts right into their profits. That means no more Asian-owned cleaners, no more Asian-owned nail salons, no more Asian-owned beauty supply stores, no more Asian-owned convenience stores, no more Asian-owned maybe gas stations or anything like that. It completely shuts them out of our economy, and that's what helps them stay afloat. That's why it kills me sometimes when some people say, what value do black people bring? Our money. People think that 1 point whatever trillion dollars in spending and consumerism was just, wasn't real. It's definitely real. Unfortunately, it can't be put into where it needs to be. It keeps getting funneled out to other places. That's another reason why some people say we don't deserve reparations, because we'll just spend it on this, that, and the third. Well, you don't know every black person. But it's glad to think that it's glad to know that maybe the 10 people that you do know is almost like a collective for everybody else. Remember, it's like 40 million plus of us in this establishment. Allegedly. We are allegedly 13%. I don't know how that is for 40 plus years, but according to the so-called census, we are. But yeah, like I said, they have a lot of nerve to say stuff like that. If you remember in the movie Do the Right Thing, towards, in one part of the movie, the Asian store owner was being very discriminatory to the black people that lived there, and he is the only Asian store I think owned. He was the only Asian store in but pretty much a black neighborhood, and he kept trying to be real discriminatory. And when they destroyed Sal's Pizza Shop, they was getting ready to go over there and destroy his Asian shop, but he was pleading with them and everything like that. I was so mad when they were not able to do it. I was like, that would have been poetic justice right there. That was one of the few parts of that movie that I did not like, was they did not destroy his shop, because he deserved it. Go back and watch the movie again and watch how he was towards some of the black customers that came into his store or near his store. And then watch how he acted after they destroyed Sal's Pizza Shop for what he did to, for what happened to, Radio Raheem. They were getting ready to destroy his shop, and it would have been well deserved. If you remember in Africa, in one of those, countries in Africa a couple years ago, they actually made it where the actual residents, the African residents there who were already there, because they had, it was some Chinese people who set up a shop there. They're doing the same thing over there. Set up shop over there. Shut them out. Made it where they could not come to their store after a certain time. They said that. But you know what they did? After that store had closed for the day, they waited for maybe a good hour. Those residents, those African residents, I forget what country it was in, went back with Molotov cocktails or whatever burning fluid whatever they could use to burn something, and burnt that business to the ground. When them Chinese owners came back the next day, it was nothing there but ash and burnt wood and smoke. I will never forget that. They said, oh, you're going to come set up shop in our neighborhoods and then tell us we can't come here after a certain time, but you can let anybody else come through there? Oh, nah. And I don't even think they were in business that long, but they took action though. And ain't nobody stop them. They was like, okay, so we'll just destroy your shop and you won't have any business. Now, I don't know if they built anything up back since then, but they let a statement be known that you're not going to come over here, set up shop, and tell us when we can and cannot frequent your store, especially when you just got here. And you probably maybe shut out a business that was owned by us to set up your own shop. Now, I'm not saying that's what has to be done, but if push comes to shove and something like that happens, it should. I.e., when that whole thing was going on last year, when you had those Asian beauty supply store owners literally beating on black women when they were coming into the stores, or accusing them of stealing and locking the door and wouldn't let them leave. It's plenty of videos online displaying that. I think the one thing that pissed me off was when those black guys was in I forgot what state it was in. It was one of those Midwestern states, and they were sitting out there on those chairs and they were protesting and telling the women not to go in there after that Asian store owner beat that grandmother with that child. And all those women came out there like 2 days later after they put up a 50% off sale, because they knew they were going to lose business behind this. So they had to do something to keep them coming. And it was a long line of black women standing in that line to come and frequent their business. And the black men who were old enough to be all of their fathers were saying, don't go in there. You had the lightest one in the crew being the loudest one in the crew come out there and tell, you can't tell me what to do. I'm gonna go here and buy my bundles. And she almost sounded like a country version of Cardi B. Like, just imagine having to hear that. That was a disgrace, seeing that. It was a disgrace seeing them line up like that just 2 days after that Asian store owner beat on that woman. That, I'm like, do you not have any morals? Is your weave that important? Or you couldn't find another store to go to? You just had to go to this one because they had a sale. After he beat the brakes off this woman, he had this woman leaking. She was bleeding out of her face. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the woman just recently passed, the one who got beat on. Not from her injuries, because of course that was last year. But, I think it might have been from something else. And he had no shame either. He did it in front of, I believe, her daughter and the grandchild. He had no shame. And y'all still went into that line the next day or 2 days later because they put up a for sale sign. And when those men were trying to protest and tell you not to go in that store, you had the lightest and loudest one in the crew making all that noise, trying to tell her, you can't tell us what to do. You're not our dad. I'm going to go and buy these bundles. Sorry about that, but back to what I was saying. And then get mad at us when we don't quote unquote protect you. I'm sorry, but I will not protect the Stragon. In the words of Kendra D, I will not uplift the bitch. Point blank, period. When I saw that happen, I was like, oh, really? And it's amazing because many people didn't really talk about it. I know I did. I made sure to talk about that. But yeah, back to, this with the Asian community. Like, they literally show you. Not all of them are going to be your friend, and a lot of them will only be your friend because you bring them business. Of course, if you bring them business, anyone will be your friend because you're bringing them something of tangibles, that money. But if you decide to stop doing business with them for whatever reason or whatever, they may shut you out. And I've not only just incidents that happen in beauty supply stores, but look at some of the incidents that's happened in nail shops. I've seen some very bad videos coming out of them nail shops. They may mess up your hands or your toes. You demand that it gets fixed, or you demand a refund, and then they start, locking that door so they can gather around you like you're like it's feeding time at the zoo. And then that's when they decide to go well on you, throwing chemicals and hitting you with brooms. I've seen so many videos last year from beauty supply stores and nail shops of how these Asians get down, especially when it comes to their black customers. It is very appalling, but not surprising. Many of them let that inner white supremacist come right on out of them And speaking of that, we can take it further back to the 90s with Latasha Harlins. That Asian store owner, that woman accused that girl of stealing, even though she saw her pay for what she bought, put the money on the counter and accused her of stealing. And she pulled the most cowardice act. When Latasha was walking out of the store, she pulls a gun, points it at the back of her head and blows her head off. That girl was only, 14? And nothing happened to the woman that killed her. Correct me if I'm wrong, to anybody who was around, who was much older back then. Didn't they destroy that store? Because let me tell you something. People in LA back in the day used to get it in. I mean, for almost anything. So if they did, I wouldn't be surprised if that actually happened. Then you just recently had the incident where this little black boy this guy claims that the boy stole something, literally followed the boy out of his own store, left and abandoned his store to grab this boy up and bring him back and literally hold him hostage with the boy in one arm, in one hand, and a gun in the other. I didn't get a chance to talk about that story, but yes, that actually happened as well. But then got the nerve to say that we are an issue. They come to our communities to set up shop, and that's the treatment that is given. Hell, I could even take it a step further. They'll set up shop in your neighborhood. You try to go to apply for a job to work there, and they won't give you a job, but you live within walking distance, and they got to drive to get to the establishment that they set up shop in. Make that make sense. Now, it's one thing if it's a family-owned business and they just want to keep it within the family. That's one thing. I understand that. But at the same time, know who your customers are. Notice at these carryouts, you don't see not one Asian person coming up in there to buy whatever it is that they're cooking. Because let's be real here. The stuff they be cooking in these Asian carryouts, they won't cook at home. This is the quote unquote Americanized version of Chinese food or Asian food or whatever it is. The same could be said about a lot of these other establishments that cook cultural based foods, and like Taco Bell, or as I call it, Taco Hell. That ain't no real Mexican food. That's the Americanized version of it. But yeah, they'll set up shop there and they won't even hide the people that they cater to. I can only think of one time where I saw a black person working in a carryout, and that was when I was in college, and that was back in 2008. And they had her working at the working in the front, like in the cashier part. That was the only time I've ever seen that ever, and I don't think I've ever seen it since. I never saw it before, and I haven't seen it since. That's why it kind of caught me by surprise when I saw it. And I think the only reason it happened is because it was sitting right there near the campus of where she went to school at. And because most of the people that frequented were college students, they allowed her to work there. But I think if it was under any other circumstances, she probably wouldn't have been able to get a job there. So her being a college student is what actually allowed her to get that job, in my opinion. But yeah, these Asians are a trip. They really are. They really are. They, like I said, a lot of them let that inner white supremacist seep out of them every time. And it's up to us to have to catch it. Because sometimes they'll be real slick with it. And that's one thing that us as ADOS have to learn how to do as a collective. Learn how to read body language. Sometimes they're not always going to verbally tell you everything, if they're smart. But you have to be able to read or be a good judgment of body language and see how they move, because a lot of them will be very uncomfortable around you, or their tone might be different with you opposed to somebody else. Like, I've seen it a lot. I even did a video on my original channel talking about another person. It was a response video where he went into a gas station or convenience store, and this Asian woman at the register was giving him a hard time. A black man. And I think he still makes videos. And I did a response to it. gave him a hard time. I forgot what it was about, but it was some BS. It really was. And it doesn't matter how nice you are to them or, you know, how much money you spend with them. They'll still act the same way to you opposed to somebody else. And I've heard before that they are known to give discounts to people that look like them should they frequent their store and then pay you and have you charge you full price. And people will spot that and peep that and said, I noticed you gave that person a discount, and then they'll come back in line and say, no, I didn't. It's like, we just saw you ring them up an item that cost $5 and you rung them up for $3. It was right there on the screen, and it'll try to turn the screen around and say, you don't know what you're talking about, and leave the store. I'm going to call the police. So, you know, I just wanted to come on here and just address that, mainly piggybacking off of that comment that Kathy Zhu character, that Mulan mishap made in my previous video. But y'all let me know what y'all think about this down in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. I will talk to you in the next one.